Hello, and welcome to Modeller's Monday Roundup, Episode 8. So I'm now starting to work on building the first of the aircraft for the diorama. Starting off obviously with the Hawker Hurricane here, which I will then make a member of 253 Squadron. As everyone who knows with me, I like to paint as much as I can on the sprues before building the model. So I have started with getting my usual Humbrol acrylic number 1 primer grey spray, and I've already gone ahead and undercoated all the sprues of the components so they're ready for some paint. So I'm now going to go through and pick out as many of the different colours and get the bits painted on the sprues before we start gluing it all together. So I'll get cracking on with that. So in the instructions we have the numbers relating to the colours of the components, and then on the sprues there's the numbers matching to the components. So I can paint an awful lot of these, especially the bits that are internal to the aircraft, before I build, which is why I like to paint on the sprues first. So 85 and 56 here are the colours for the components in the first step. 56 is an aluminium and 85 is a coal black. So I've got a silver and a black, so I will find those components and then start painting them, and then work my way through as much as I can before I'm going to have to build some bits. So the first component, which funny enough is component 1, the main body of the pilot seat, located it on the sprues there. I've already shaken the tin of silver quite thoroughly and put a couple of dabs into the palette. So I'm now going to just put, as I've demonstrated in previous episodes painting other models, just going to put a thin layer of the paint over the component, and then once that's dry I can put a second coat over, which helps hide brush strokes. Now painted all the components up to step 19, and this one gives you the option of, as you can see here, having the gun bays open. So I've decided that this aircraft is going to be sitting on the ground in a pen, being rearmed and refueled. So I am going to remove these. So I have taken these two wing sections out of the sprues so that they can be down onto the cutting mat. So this is the area that I'll be cutting out, and this is the wing I've done already. Just got to neaten it up a bit with the file. Once I've cut that, I'll do that to them both. Right, so for removing the section of the wing, I have a knife here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently score a line where I'm going to be cutting. Do it in little sections at a time. There's already some indents in the model that I can follow, but then there's a few places where there isn't. So I'm just going to carefully score along there, around the area that's to come out. And then once I've got that carefully made score line, I can then just follow it as I'm demonstrating on this little section here, just slowly pushing harder and harder each time until eventually it will come through out on the other side of the model, and then I'll just slowly work that way along the whole line and then follow round, and then near the end it should just be able to pop out. So as you can see, I've come through most of the way around, so we're nearly there for this one. It might just actually now tease out. Yep. There we go, so that's that bit done. And then first off, then I'm going to look for any big bits that we have just there, and I can shave them off with the knife. And then I shall go on little files and then just tidy up around these edges. Right, little pack of modelling files here. So they're now looking a lot neater, and then I will wait till I'm actually doing a bigger paint to make these a similar grade to the undercoat grey if need be when painting that area later on. So I'm now going to go back to painting all the other bits on the sprues, and while I do that we'll have a little look at the prototype I'm modelling. This Hurricane Mark 1 P3717 joined 253 Squadron in June 1940 after it was constructed. It moved with them to RAF KENLEY on the 29th of August same year, and the next day on the 30th it was involved in dogfights over Red Hill and returned with such damage that it had to go away for repairs, which were quite extensive. Upon completion it was then moved on to another squadron. It still exists with us today and is in private ownership, and currently is seen at the Shuttleworth collection. The Hurricane we look at now is a Mark II, and this was seen at the Brooklands Museum in Surrey. Although not a member of 253 Squadron, we include this Hurricane Mark II because the Brooklands Museum is very close at heart to the Walton-on-Thames Transport and Model Enthusiast Society. I've kindly been supplied some further pictures of RAF KENLEY. These pictures were taken in 2006 and show the east side of the airfield that we're going to be attempting to model from a couple of different angles. These pictures are helpful as they show a bit more of the ground contour than I could get from the aerial photos in the previous episode. So with as much as I can paint now done on the two aircraft, before I start constructing them so that I can then paint the outside colours, I'm going to start working on the RAF KENLEY airfield itself, so I've got somewhere to put the planes once built. So I've got myself some foam board. This is 5mm thick, and I'm going to start making the full-size versions of the blast pen sides while I also sort out the base material for the first section of the diorama. And so we'll continue on in a future episode.
Welcome, and once again thanks for joining me in showing you the updates and the progress for the Eurofighter Typhoon build as part of the 172 scale then and now build. So, as you saw at the last episode that we was featured on, we had successfully completed the installation of the rear rudders. Now we move on to installing wingtip defensive aids. One goes here and the other one will go into there. As the construction of those parts, they are made up of 4 parts. 2 per wingtip. One there, one there, one there, one there. So all those 4 parts will be given a paint, and we will use a Humbrol paint, a grey paint, code 167. Okay, so now with the wingtip defensive aids on, one here, one there, we now go on to this area. This area is where the dorsal brake is located. As for the construction of this dorsal air brake, this comprises of 2 parts. First of all, the hydraulic ram, which is this part here. This will be painted black using Humbrol 33. This part here, which is the actual brake housing, and it's the flap that would raise and lower. This gets painted in Humbrol 167 grey. Okay, so we've installed the dorsal air brake. However, we've decided to actually install it in the closed position rather than the open position as depicted on the instructions. We've also now attached the nose ram dome at the front. This is where a lot of the radar equipment would be installed and featured. Next, we're going to look at doing the cockpit canopy. The cockpit canopy actually comes as 2 parts. Small part for the front, and then the main cockpit part itself. This is where this would actually go. I'll just give you a quick glimpse. There, roughly about there. Although it's the wrong way round, so we'd actually put it the right way round. There you go. So it would fit there, covering the pilot. And then this would be hinged for whether it's being open or not. However, for the purpose of the end result, we're going to actually leave this off and just install this front piece, which will go around about there somewhere. Now with the canopy part applied, we turn to the underneath, more specifically this area here, which will have this part put into place. Firstly, it will be given a paint using Humbrol 167, which is the same colour as this. Okay, so with it all painted up, this part was then fixed into place. This part and this part here were also then painted before being fixed in place. Now we're going to move on to the rear part of the plane here. This is where the turbofan exhausts belong. These will be given a paint again prior to being applied. Here's one of them here ready for painting. So with the exhaust now on, we now move on to the wheelbase. We will start with this front wheel bay first. So for the front wheel base, we will need this part here, which will need to be painted white using Humbrol 130. And the other part is this wheel here, and this will be painted black using Humbrol number 33. With the front wheel assembly now complete, we now turn our attention onto the 2 rear wheels, all the parts of which have already been pre-painted and are ready now to be installed. Okay, so we have now added the rear wheels in place, and that is all for this episode. In the next sequence, which will be shown in a future episode, we will complete the model, and we will also take a look at the diorama in which both this and the previously built Spitfire will sit with. Make sure to join us again at a later stage. what is on my workbench right now? Well, right now I'm working on an Airfix 172 scale then and now project. It's actually nearing completion. And it actually features 2 planes. The first plane is this one, which is a Spitfire Mark IIA. That's from the then and now, of which is this, a Eurofighter Typhoon. And again, just finished the plane. It's not having any decals on it. We're actually going to leave it off without the decals. And again, just to finalise that project, we're working on the diorama base. This is what's currently being done. It's just had some glass scenic materials added, but some more works to be done. Progress switches can be followed through this YouTube series, Modeller's Monday Roundup, from previous episodes and as well as future episodes.
On my bench right now is, as I was talking earlier, is an Academy F18. It's the E version, 143 Peking Dogs. Yeah, I just love these things. I love the F18 as well. So that's my current project, along with the railway, which is always a current project.
On my workbench right now is the RAF KENLEY stuff that we've been watching, but I've also got a Star Wars Legion game, the core box set that I'm just starting to build. I'm also working on some diorama bases for the dinosaurs that I have. And I've also got a couple of model railway projects sitting just aside here, ready to go as well.
To model, in the future to model, I would love to do the Trumpeter 350 scale Nimitz class carrier. Whether it's Nimitz or the other one, I'm not sure if it's John C. Stennis, but yeah, I would love to do the 350 scale Nimitz class carrier. Again, Fantasyland currently, because I have nowhere do I have space on my workbench to build something that size without destroying everything else. But yeah, that would be a corker. That or a model railway of Bolton Steam Shed before it closed. That would be a corker too.
For those who know me personally, know that I have a huge love of the steam locomotives of southern England that were run between the 30s and 40s through to the 60s when the steam scene ended. And I've got quite a large collection of locomotives in 00 scale from the 50s, 60s period. So I'd like to build a large shed diorama layout of some sort for them. I have a good idea of which shed I will base this on, and if I can go ahead with it, you will see it in a future episode. I've got a couple other sort of model railway project ideas as well that interested in doing, which will incorporate a few of my other interests, like sort of a heritage railway scene with a vintage weekend going on, so that we can get some of the other models I've built onto the event field beside the railway.
What would I like to do in the future? Well, one of my big plans for the future is actually building up a range from the Thomas the Tank Engine collection, and that will be every locomotive that's ever been seen from start to current day. It will be a long-term project and an expensive project, because I won't be using ready-to-run Thomas the Tank Engine locomotives available on the market. Our plan will be to either modify other types of ready-to-run rolling stock or kit build. Now, to kit build, say Thomas itself, which is a London Bright South Coast E2, all the parts together come to about £140, and that's just for the first locomotive. So, as what I say, it's an expensive and very long-term project. Would hopefully be able to do at some stage.
As mentioned in the previous episode's questions, I have an Ark Royal kit that I want to build, and I would like them to have a go at scratch building a much larger scale version of the World War II aircraft carrier. And I've also already gathered in 172 scale examples of some of the different aeroplanes that the Fleet Air Arm had used aboard her. So I might well hopefully get cracking on that for something I'd love to do in the future.